Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I am super excited today to introduce you to Ovi Poulter. This is going to be a unique episode because we're going to talk about creativity and how that plays into our holistic health and what that actually means to Ovi, but also like what that can mean to us. We forget that creativity is part of our health and wellness, and we are living day to day or through our kids or just busy with work. So I'm super excited to hear her story and then also start to spark some curiosity within you to think about like what lights you up, what creative aspects have you forgotten about over the years, and where can you dip your toe back in now that maybe you have a little more free time or you're just ready to start pouring back into yourself. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Robin, for having me. I feel happy we're going to have this conversation. I'm curious where it's going to take us.
So kind of what path did you take that took you down this particular road, and why are you so interested in what you're doing?
So it needs a little pre-story, prequel to the moment that I touched the brush, so to speak, because I found creativity much later in life. That was 7 years ago. So growing up, it was a family. I'm from Lithuania, tight quarters, mom, dad, maternal grandma, grandpa, and sister. My father did not love me because he didn't know how to love. He was abandoned himself. So that was a huge trauma for me. When I was 16, my parents divorced because my father was an alcoholic. And the same year, I was assaulted. And then somehow everything changed. Nobody was asking me how I'm feeling, how I'm doing. I stopped asking myself. So for about 25 years, I did the steps I'm supposed to do, work, study, find a husband, marry, infertility struggles, have kids, doing all the right things to survive, like therapy, medication. It still wasn't helping me fully. And of course, it messes with your head, the depression and everything that happens. And so I was in survival, pure survival, and then whatever comes after survival, even after that. My kids were my twins were 6 years old, 7 years ago, and my girl was 15. My girl, who's 15 now, was 8 years old. So I have a full-time job, and I couldn't take it anymore. My body said, that's it. My mental health as well agreed with that. I had to go to the hospital for a suicidal attempt. And then when I came back, I started living my life again, and just the medicine and therapy wasn't doing it for me. A wise person told me, you need to find a creative outlet. I picked up a community brochure, looked through it, and one of the things that I kind of remotely was interested was oil painting, and it was all levels. So I did that for 2 years. It wasn't immediate, that love and access to the parts that were dormant. I did start to feel small changes in me, that it's something that actually helps me not to think about the past and worry about the future. I've noticed that I was able to slow down. But only during the COVID, when I found a generous teacher who was able to teach me how to paint with oils in one sitting, did that direct line to that dark mass of me that was my 16-year-old self part, not mature. Then was I able to see that direct connection. And what started coming out on canvas, which were flowers, because I used to spend my safe space was summer spent in grandma's garden with flowers, with fruit, with everything, like little patch of land, with little cottage outside the town. So every time I would paint flowers. And then I made a connection that's why, because it's a safe space. And also my three strongest connections in my life are my maternal grandma, grandpa, and then my husband. I just started making all the sense in the world. So I would say 5 years ago, noticed that it's healing, actually, that I'm able to access and put back together parts of me that when, that were left behind in development. And if that makes sense, I started truly holding more space for feeling more emotions. I started being able not to be in victim mode all the time. I started being able to actually create something beautiful and be surprised at it. I still have the biggest struggles with self-love. That's my biggest struggle. But as far as creativity goes, and as far as my love tank capacity to love others has increased as well, all because truly art was like my lifeline. It touched the part of me nothing else could. No medication, no therapy was able to access that part except for art.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for being vulnerable, for telling your truth and telling your story, because everybody's story matters, because we all matter. But it also is amazing when we can articulate those things out loud, because other people could be going through it, could be feeling it, maybe don't even know they went through it. And these give them those light bulb moments where it might spark in them something to dig a little deeper. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's a vulnerable place to be, but by you telling your story, you're healing yourself, but you're also healing others. And as little kids, we have the capacity to only hold so much. And we also have zero control over what our parents do and how they behave from their challenges they grew up with. And so things are put upon us that we're not necessarily ready for or asking for, or just not going to create good health, right? But as a little child, we learn coping. And how do we cope? We typically shut things down. When it's too much capacity for us to take in, we just don't take it in. And the understanding at that moment that this is just the way it is, right? But it's not until we expand as humans and we get past formative years where our brains gets fully developed, and then we start to have different cognition and can see things from a different light. I do think therapy is super important. I do think medication has a place, but I often say, and my audience knows this, is that health is just not the food on your plate. It's not just the movement. It's not just the therapy. It's not just one thing. It's a accumulation of all things. And we call primary foods all things off your plate that feed your soul, which is relationship. It is creativity. It is finances. It's education. It's community. It's spirituality. It's all of these parts and pieces that help to make and shape us into who we are meant to be. And a lot of times some of those pieces don't get addressed, or they get addressed in a way that shows us lack. And so then we're having to sort of piece those things if we're interested, right? If we find something to pull ourselves out of that victim mode, we're able to start that healing process. And it sounds like, you went through a lot of hardship, but that led you to your husband.
Yes.
And then that led you to the therapies and the medication to help you to get to a point where you could then find something like painting. Because maybe 10 years ago, when you weren't ready for that, you weren't ready to take that on, and it wouldn't have been a healing practice for you.
Yes.
I do think that we dismiss creativity as a part of healing. Journaling is creativity, drawing's creativity, music is creativity, writing poems, anything that allows you, being out in nature, like anything where you can have a creative mindset. It helps your mind. What I've learned is it helps your mind to expand, to be able to hold more information, hold more space to start to do those healing practices for yourself. And I heard you say you're still working on the self-love piece.
Yes.
And I think having awareness around that and being able to verbalize that is amazing. But we're all still a work in progress, right? There's none of us that are at the end of that progress until we're no longer here. And so it's good for you to have something to work with and work for. Again, having 3 children, you're showing them you can overcome obstacles. You're showing them that the hand that you were dealt is not going to predict the rest of your life. And I think you're doing so amazing with that to show your kids that there's other possibilities. It's so much deeper than just the experience and how you're healing. You're impacting all these people around you. So good for you. And you're still on a journey, right? You're still not all the way there. So For people who are in the audience that have maybe not ever thought about painting, maybe never thought about that being an outlet for them, it doesn't sound like you grew up artsy. It doesn't sound like, it just sounds like you went in, you saw something, you took a chance by
Yes.
going to that class. I always say, get curious, go to a music class, go to an art class, go to a yoga, try things on. You don't know if you haven't had the experience how you're going to react emotionally, internally, physically, mentally, all of the things. So I heard you like saying picking up that brochure. What does that feel like to you now, like in hindsight, that you actually picked that brochure up and you gave yourself that chance to go?
So I wasn't thinking about it then much about the significance, but it was all the divine plan. It was all part of the bigger picture. And now I think I blessed that day when I picked up that brochure. I bless it. I'm thankful for it. And that was my little way of segue into finding, the healing. And you're right about if I had done it a couple of years before, probably I wouldn't have been ready. But at that moment, when I picked it up, I was ready, Robin. So it was interesting, though. I had a generous teacher, but it was working a little bit against my nature because we have to also pay attention to our nature. Like if you have ADHD, for example, like I do, many people do, painting the same painting for 10 weeks, like the same landscape, could be daunting, could be you can get bored of it, and it could become like a duty
Mm-hmm.
that you must do rather than enjoyment. And I learned from that teacher. I was very lucky to have her. But like I mentioned before, not until I started working with my nature, not against it, which was finding a teacher who taught me how to paint with oils in one sitting, meaning you start the painting and you finish it the same day, 2, 3, 4 hours, no matter how complicated it is. And then things started to happen, to click, the fireworks in my head and connections started happening between my mind and my body. So to answer your question, I blessed the day when I picked up that brochure.
Yeah, and I love that because you went into that day not knowing what was ahead, but
Yes.
what you did know is that your ability to get something from it wasn't a painting for 10 weeks. And I think people go in and have one experience and shut it down because it didn't work for them in that particular way. But I often say, give it a couple of tries, find different people, because like you said, you're going to resonate with different people and different people are going to be aligned with you. You mentioned the fireworks going off and then the connection in your body. And so nervous system regulation is something that I think is a missing component for a lot of overworked, overstressed, overtaxed women that are stumbling through life and they don't know
Yeah.
how to get that nervous system back into regulation. Slowing down is a good thing. So, what was your experience in slowing down to do the art? What did you notice within your body for the nervous system regulation?
First and foremost, I would paint. That would be the only time when the kids went to bed, and I would paint at night at the kitchen table because we live humbly. I don't have a well-lit fancy studio. When guests come,
Nor
we
do you
just come.
need one. Nor do you need one, right? That's not what
Exactly.
health is about.
Exactly. So one thing I noticed is that I would be in the moment, which was number one. If I would think about my anxiety as electricity going from my body, that electric current would be so much less anxiety going from my body. So definitely it would put me in the moment. I would not even think thoughts, I would think, for the duration of painting. Definitely more relaxed. I would finish the painting session feeling lighter than I came in. Maybe leaving the troubles of the day there, just leaving some weights off. And definitely more in touch with myself, feeling more whole. I
Mm.
can, that's undeniable. That is what I was feeling.
I love what you said because the activity in itself allowed you to pause and be present in the moment, which by being present in the moment, it stopped the spinning of thoughts.
Yes.
And so, for people that might have anxious thoughts, which pretty much is every person, some more than others, but when that anxious thought comes up, it is finding the tool that you can put into place that can help to slow that down and see it from a different lens. So just curious, if you were midday, let's just say, and you started to have, obviously you can't run over and start painting, right? Because I mean, maybe you can, but if you're not in the moment to be able to do that, is there truth behind closing your eyes and visualizing yourself painting? Have you ever done that to calm your thoughts down?
No, I have not. I sometimes use plain thing as box breathing,
Mhm.
4, 4, 4, 4, or I do not visualize paintings, but because I like to paint flowers, I start to think, what flowers will I get from my florist, or what flowers will I get from the
Okay.
farmer's market? And so I direct my anxiety towards something productive, and that
Yeah.
kind of shifts it for me.
I love that. I love that. And one of the things I say to my clients is like when those thoughts come up, it's like pausing and asking yourself, how is this thought serving you? How is it going to move you forward on your journey? And it's like having that conversation with yourself. Sounds like you're doing that through picking flowers and where you're going to go and all of that. Similar to visualization, but you're having like the real time. You're not just visualize doing it. You're thinking about what you're going to get, which I
Yes.
that's really amazing. And I think creativity is kind of like the lost art when it comes to healing oneself and having the ability, again, to open up the capacity to do some of the healing that we need to do because we live in such a fast paced world and it's scary to slow down. When you slow down at the beginning, it feels uncomfortable because we're not used to taking the time for ourselves, let alone taking the time to have our own thoughts, right? That are not just the racing thoughts. I just wanted to have you on because I think creativity, again, is something that we miss out on a lot of times when we are working on our health and wellness. So, after you discovered that this was something that you wanted, that helped you, and that you wanted to continue doing for yourself, how did you expand that out to using non toxic oils and working with other people?
So when I found my second teacher during COVID, I did all the things that I was taught what a successful artist supposedly has to do, meaning market, 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 sell, sell, sell. And that wasn't satisfying my heart at all. It was just, that was my signal. I did it for 2, 3 years, selling, marketing, websites, you name it. All along, I was craving for connection. I was craving for connection with people. So I developed lots of connections with my people who are getting my paintings. But it wasn't everything. And I would say about half a year ago, I stopped pushing so hard. I just hunkered down and I made a series of paintings based on my childhood memories. My solo show, that felt good, just based on my life with grandparents. All kinds of memories like picking cherries for jam, going mushroom foraging, just florals in their garden. And this is waiting to be revealed, in September during my solo show. But to answer your question, because it wasn't satisfying my soul, I kept pursuing it. My therapist said, every conversation we have comes back to art. There's something there. You need to explore that. So one night I was up. I was just like thinking, thinking, thinking. And then I decided that I would like to try teaching to see how that would be. Would that feel good? Because my kids tell me I have zero patience for them. I had my paintings in this gift shop, local gift shop, and the owner was also having classes. So I said, let me talk to her about maybe doing like a cycle of 4 little classes. And so we had a conversation, and she said, I don't want toxic oil paints in my shop. I want non-toxic only. So 2 things to mention here. I was researching and I found, after long research, I found a very good brand, American brand that I'm using now of completely non-toxic oils, no smells. And then I said to myself, how am I going to teach people to use non-toxic oils while I myself in my own practice, I'm using toxic oils? The dissonance grew bigger and bigger. And then the research itself too, how in some classes people just pour turpentine down the sink, and it was terrible. You know what I was learning? And so I just calmly collected all my paints, waited for hazardous waste collection in my county. Cold turkey. Purchased. I did not even use up all my toxic paints. I invested in non-toxic oils. I did all my practice paintings, did that teaching cycle, and the response was so positive. And I have to tell you this. So my parents both were teachers, grandparents, my grandparents, maternal grandparents. They met in the village in Lithuania. She was teaching elementary, he was teaching math, and they met like in the village school. And, I thought to myself, I'm continuing their legacy, that kind of, I'm continuing their legacy, even though I thought I couldn't teach, but here I am. And then I just was putting recycles out in the backyard, and I saw female and male cardinal sitting on a branch. To me, that was affirmation that they are affirming of me. I believe in that. And had some more sleepless nights, and still it wasn't a complete picture. And then it came to me that I want to do this for free. How it helped me, the art, to regulate my nervous system when I needed it the most. I decided I want to do this as free offering from me, having supplies provided by me, that if I sell any other paintings from that moment on, if I teach any workshops for profit, anything will go into those offerings. I call them floral sessions with Ovi, and I officially am a nonprofit now, just as of yesterday.
Yay! That's so awesome.
And so we had our first session in May. We had 12 people, and the whole point was I invited people who I thought needed it, and it was an overwhelming success. I had people who never painted before. There was a one-woman doctor who came. She's actually from Ukraine. She works in the front lines, but her daughter lives here, so she came to visit her daughter for 2 weeks. She painted for the first time in her life. Her daughter said she was happy. That's all I needed to hear. She was happy. We painted lilacs. I did. So with non-toxic oils allows me to have those workshops because it doesn't smell. I'm not putting anything in the trash that's bad for the environment, that's bad for our lungs or skin or eyes. Using those materials has helped me to develop this. And one fellow artist who has a studio opened up her doors for me for a very reasonable rent and asked her to be a founding partner of my nonprofit. She's going to do maybe sessions on her craft. So it was just so good. One thing I can tell you is that co-regulation was happening. When you see that someone else is having a calm moment, and people who I never thought would talk to somebody else, they were talking to each other. So that group setting allowed them, and that, in Drew, that study from Drew University that says just 45 minutes of creating anything, just with your hands, lowers your stress hormones dramatically. Yeah. So we did that for 2 hours. So people left lighter 100%. 100%. Everybody left lighter, smiling. So the difference from your typical sip and paint night was that I tried to, from the moment they entered, I tried to make them feel super welcome. I tried to be very calming in my voice. I tried to be very encouraging, going around and trying to praise something, one little detail about the painting that person did, something that I liked, something that stuck out to me. To be encouraging and to be positive and to be calming in behavior, voice, everything, in music, background music. And it was just so good. And then I asked them to nominate, when the session was over, I asked the women to nominate somebody from their circle who might need this. And guess what? In June, I had to add another session because I didn't want to turn people away. So now in June, I'm going to have 2 of those painting sessions with non-toxic oils. And it's
going to take off from there. I got goosebumps several times from that little bit. Some of the things that really, really stood out to me is the courage that day to pick up that brochure, to take that first step in. There is no way you would have known what was coming forward. And by having the courage to do something different, has not only allowed you to continue on your healing journey, but now you're opening space for other people to come in on their journey wherever they are. Because everybody, let's be honest, everybody can afford to have a night where they come in and decompress. And no matter where you are in your journey, no matter what traumas you've had or haven't had, or what relationship you have or haven't, if you're living generally in life, everybody can really have that ability to come in and decompress. So I love that you're holding space. I love that you created a nonprofit. And if you know anything about me, the non-toxic thing just literally gave me goosebumps, because it is also about caring for our environment, right? I mean, and we don't have to do things the traditional way, and we can still get great results. And it's like using non-toxic foods versus toxic food, using non-toxic products versus toxic, and paint's included in that. It's just something we don't think of. But not only are you providing that space, you're also providing a safe environment for the people and then for Mother Earth. So every little step that you're taking very slowly on your journey, I feel like is really bringing you to a greater moment of healing for yourself, but really expanding to heal other people and learning from their stories. And I love how you have them nominate somebody, because that is a great way to produce growth. But that growth mindset is the growth other people are going to have, not just you per se. And I love that about you. I love that you're able to hold the space for others, because number one, people are too scared to do it sometimes, or there's too many roadblocks or obstacles. And you could use your past, right, as a crutch, and you could use it as the roadblock, but you're not. You're pushing through all of those things. So you're showing other people what's possible, no matter what and how your life might have started, because then you didn't have control, but now you do have that control. And one healthy step forward is going to create another healthy step or habit in another area of wellness, and so on. And it's a ripple effect. What you're doing goes way beyond just painting. The community you're creating for yourself and for them is, to me, the biggest accomplishment, the biggest thing, that God is putting you in this place to serve other people. I love the nonprofit organization side of things. It just goes and shows your character. You're not really there to sell your paintings for $1 million. You're here to serve people and show people what's possible for themselves. And that's going to take you way further than having just the art galleries, right? And just, and again, you do connect with the people who purchase, but it's a brief connection. What you're doing is the community piece, which is where you're going to really find connection. And I really think that's your next step to increasing your capacity for your own self-love.
Thank you. That's very interesting observation. And, I'm trying to also do this online, because I have like an online little offering, but I want to do this for free on YouTube live. But for a lot of people, entry purchasing supplies is a big entry. So that's a huge barrier. I will try to, that's my goal, to get a supply kit to at least one person who's going to be joining my YouTube online live painting club. So that's going to be my goal starting in June, to at least gather supplies, all non-toxic supplies, so that a person could paint and use those paints, and at least once a month relax and and go back to themselves, if I can put it that way.
Obviously you can sell the kits, but one of the cool things is, like, if myself and a friend wanted to do it, virtually, we could buy one kit together and share the paints and come together. So even though you're virtual, we might not be virtual. Again, that's an opportunity for local people to gather to then do your, workshop. And then they could also share paints.
Wow, that is a very good idea. I'm going to promote that. I'm going to steal that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You're creating the space for it, but I get the barrier to entry as far as how much things cost, but how do we work around that, right? Because and this is not just for the painting, this is for everything in life. We're always going to have challenges, right? We're always going to have those barriers, and it's what we decide to do with the barrier. How do we have to get creative. We have to get our problem solving skills out and figure out, well, how do we make this work? And, again, through your nonprofit, if you're raising funds, you could always raffle off one set to somebody that's, then they could share it or whatever. So again, there's so many opportunities for growth here and every hurdle that you're going to face. So, and it sounds like you have that mentality to push through and figure it out. So that is probably why you're in this position, because you're the perfect person for it. So again, I wanted to go back just really quick because one of the things you mentioned was like the power of like the gentle spaces for our mental health. And so what could that look like for women when we're talking about creating something, but how does that relate to the mind and the mental health part of it?
So, well, one of the things that I noticed, when I started doing it myself, is that I was much calmer. And so I got curious why. And just recently, I took this little small introductory course in polyvagal theory.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted to know why. Why is that happening? So that's where I learned the term co-regulation. I think that's an important factor. I think that's why the in person groups that are in a calm environment, doing the same thing, the same repetitive thing with their hands for the common purpose, is very, very therapeutic. And then flowers as well. I gravitate towards flowers, and there's lots of landscape painters, but flower itself, you can do so much with it. One of the things, how I say, if someone does not have even, I hear excuses all the time. I don't have time. I don't have this. So then I say, then buy flowers at Trader Joe's. Buy one flower from grocery store, put it in a vase and smell it once in a while. Just anything to crack the door open to creativity, to that part of you that's sleeping. And encourage your listeners, give your mental health a chance, give your nervous system a chance to calm down by following through that maybe little mini spark of, oh, that throwing the clay looked kind of interesting, or oh, that embroidery workshop looked interesting. If there's any like little lights in your brain, in your head, or in your heart for anything, going and exploring it, like you said, is giving yourself a chance to actually finding something that's going to be helping you to calm down and and get into that growth mindset, and truly then be more generous and more loving, not only towards yourself but towards others in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an opportunity for growth. It doesn't have to be oil paintings with flowers. This
Yes.
is just an example of what
Yes.
creativity can look like. But if somebody was interested and they're like, that does sound like something I want to try, where can they find you for in-person class workshops? But then where will you be on YouTube so that they can find you there as well?
My main hub for everything is my Instagram.
Okay.
So it's Ovi Poulter Art, OviPaulter Art.
I'll
And
put all of this in the show notes for you guys.
yes, yes, because it's a mouthful. And so I need 50 followers on YouTube to go live. But so
Okay.
if I have to, I will record first one and put
Mhm.
it as a recording in June.
Yep.
But I'm hoping that very soon I will be able to go live, because there's nothing like doing it at the same time with people.
Absolutely. So if you're listening, even if you're not really interested, what we can do to help her is to go to her YouTube channel and just subscribe. So that way we can help boost her to 50 so that she can start doing those live classes. That's the least we can
Thank you
do.
so much.
So yeah, and we can all do that, right? Because even if it's not something that interests us, we have to think of other people and how it might serve them. Let's at least do that if we are not curious and wanting to do a class. But your Instagram, I've been on it. I love it. I think what you're doing is amazing. And I do think it's going to touch a lot of people's lives because of your heart, not just because of your skill. So thank you for all that you're doing. And thank you for bringing creativity to life and to light as a healing tool that people can use as we rediscover who we are in whatever chapter that we're in, as we heal from past things that, we don't even know that we need to heal from. All of the things that happened during our expansion of life is what I call it, is really necessary. And you're doing something that can really move people towards that. So thank you. Even if this is not your cup of tea, I know it has your wheels turning. And the 1% shift I want you guys to walk away with this week is what lights you up. If you don't even know if art is your thing, I mean, I always say I'm not an artist, but if I go take one of those painting classes, I'm always, surprised, like, oh, okay, it's not that, but, for me, it's being in nature. For me, it's connecting through other creativity outlets, but I've never really given it a chance. So I'm going to have to get curious and take the time to expand and see if it is something that might help. And I think, again, that's another thing. We just grow up with what we know, and then we have to try on other things as we're now expanded in wisdom, we're expanded in experience, we're expanded in trauma, we're expanded in all the things, right? And so we have to give ourselves some grace and some space to try on new things. And thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your story. And for my listeners, I know y'all are getting some good takeaways, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think. Leave us a comment after the podcast, or you can connect on Instagram. I'll drop everything in the show notes. Hope you have a blessed day, and I will see y'all next week.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you for everything.